Have you ever had a student struggle with sight reading? Me too. Can rote teaching improve sight reading? Well, some students just seem to be a little better at sight reading than others, right? Have you ever wondered if students may become obsessed with looking at their hands when they're learning by rote? Well, I'm Glory St. Germain from Ultimate Music Theory, and my special guest today is Samantha Coates, and she's about to answer those how rote teaching can improve sight reading questions. Welcome, Samantha.
Thank you so much, Glory. Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me. This is exciting.
I'm so excited you're here. Now, Samantha Coates is an international piano pedagogue, presenter, creator, publisher of BlitzBooks, Piano, Sight Reading, and Theory. We share that passion. And they bring laughter and creativity to music students and teachers. And I think that's awesome. She's been running her very successful piano studio in Sydney, Australia for over 3 decades, although she doesn't look that old, but still, and is passionate about helping students to work towards the goal of a lifetime association and, of course, the love of music. And I think as professional educators, it really should be a dream that we all share. So, Samantha, let's start with your story. How did you get started with your music lessons?
Well, I think my grandmothers both taught me a few little pieces by rote when I was about 3 or 4 years old, but I started formal lessons when I was 5. And I had a Russian piano teacher and I was learning the strict Russian piano method. And then when I was 6, I wasn't practicing and my mum took my piano lessons away from me because she said, well, she's obviously not interested. And my grandmother was mortified. My piano teacher was mortified. And I stopped lessons. And then for some reason, who knows why, I kind of just started tinkling at the piano again, maybe 6 months later. And then my mum said, oh, would you like to have lessons back? And I said, yes, please. And then I did. But that is such an unusual experience because basically, you know, my mother did the thing that I now write blogs about. Parents should not think that just because their child doesn't willingly practice that they don't want to learn to play. And I always say, don't mistake a child who doesn't want to practice for a child who doesn't want to play a musical instrument. They don't understand the importance of practice. So I was really lucky that I just happened to have a piano in the house and tinkle away and got my lessons back. And then I started becoming quite serious about piano, and it led to going to a specialist music high school and then a music degree in performance, and then lots and lots of teaching, and then and then a publishing career. Wow. So I feel like I've had a really lucky path.
You have had a really amazing path. And now, did you start sight reading by rote or by reading music?
That's a really good question because I was never taught by rote, ever. In fact, I was taught that rote was bad, that it was cheating. As I said, I had a Russian piano teacher and I always learned by notation. And then I taught the way I was taught. I never used rote teaching, ever. I just assumed that would completely obliterate all possibility of sight reading. So I never used rote teaching until a couple of years ago, when I actually went and saw a session with the authors of Piano Safari, and they were talking about all the benefits of rote teaching. And it was about 2.5 years ago. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And I thought I would give it a go in terms of just helping students who were really, really struggling with sight reading. Yeah. Anyway, to summarize this journey, I discovered that actually rote can help with sight reading if it's incorporated immediately, because we learn music the way we learn language. So I decided to start writing pieces where you originally start by teaching a piece by rote, but then you immediately engage with the score, and then the score gradually changes. And then we're eventually sight reading. So in a lot of the methods that I've seen, there are some pieces to be taught by rote and there are some pieces to be taught with reading. And my mission is actually to combine the two, because I actually think it can lead to sight reading.
Absolutely. I think really when we speak about that, Samantha, it just makes so much sense, because I think when we explore different modalities and ways of learning, it actually gives us so much more success when we have, visual and auditory and kinesthetic skills that we can put together. And I'm wondering, so, you talked about your journey as a student, and then a non-student, and then coming back to being a student, and obviously going on to teach. But what was maybe your motivation on your own musical journey and eventually your business?
That's also, you ask good questions, Glory. My own motivation was definitely, I'm very passionate about music notation. So it's kind of interesting that now I've embraced rote teaching, because the whole path up until now has always been music notation and music literacy. Mm-hmm. So I've always loved music theory. I always found that I had a knack for explaining it to students who couldn't understand it very well, because, as you know, it's always easy to teach the good students. Yes. It's the students who are more challenging that make us better teachers. Yeah. So I found that I really enjoyed trying to explain music theory to those students. But the texts that were available in Australia, the music theory texts, the ones that I grew up with, were extremely boring and extremely dry, and used words like somewhat. And I just think that should not be present in a child's music textbook. So I just went about writing my own versions for the syllabuses here in Australia, and decided to inject a bit of humor into it, because why not? Why not have casual language and get them to giggle a little bit here and there? They learn so much better when they're happy. Yeah. So I had this series of music theory books, which have the logo Blitz on them. So the title is How to Pass, crossed out, Blitz, Grade 1 Theory, because we don't want to just pass it, we want to blitz it, because in Australia we say that we blitz our exams, whereas I think you say that you ace your exams.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, same sort of sentiment though. Yeah. So these theory books were all about being able to blitz the theory exams. And then I branched out into a series of piano sight reading books, because I'm very, very passionate about sight reading. And I was always a good sight reader because I did it all the time. As you know, you can't be a good sight reader any other way. No one is born knowing how to sight read.
Yes.
If you talk to anyone who sight reads well and ask them why they're a good sight reader, they will say, oh, I just do it all the time. Maybe they play all the time for church, or they're always accompanying somebody. They're always doing it. So that's the reason why they're good at it. It's because they do it all the time.
Well, and like anything else, when you're good at something, then you enjoy it more, and then you want to do more of it, because now you're having fun doing it. And I think it's awesome that you've created these publications that are fun, because that's really what learning is. I think we learn much more effectively when we're engaged and enjoy learning. I know myself, I'm always studying and learning something. And if the instructor has got some humor, or if there's, just sort of that room for laughter within the learning, I'm more keen on really hearing what it's all about and implementing what I've learned. And as the author of sight reading materials, how did you really come to embrace rote teaching then?
Well, as the author of sight reading materials, as you know, when we're going from a notation perspective, we need to start with the easiest keys to read, which are C major, G major, F major. We always start in that C major position because it's the easiest one to read, but actually it's not the easiest key to play in. Chopin always started his students on B major. We know that B major is a far more comfortable position to be in than C major. So what got me started on rote teaching was that in order to play in the keys that feel good for beginners, in comfortable keys that suit our technique and that are easy to play, we need to be in a key that is not so easy to read. So therefore, it makes sense to approach it by rote at first. So we can get that comfortable hand position going. So I have my sight reading series, which is very notation based. It starts with, very simple rhythm values, and it starts with all white keys and works its way up from C major. That's when you're working from a notation point of view. And most method books actually do that. But that means that we're in this uncomfortable position for beginners. In fact, both thumbs on middle C is a is not a great position to be in from a technique point of view. So if we want to be playing in E Lydian, which is very comfortable, E Lydian has your short fingers on the white notes and your long fingers on the black notes, and it's a wonderful key for beginners to play in. But reading, it looks really scary on the page.
Yes.
So what I've tried to do now is, okay, well, we can play it first by rote. We can feel how comfortable it is. Now we've got our hand position established. Now, if we engage with the score and that score gradually changes, it's fine to sight read in E Lydian. It doesn't matter that we don't understand every concept on the page, but we can still do it and feel comfortable and play nicely and play well. So I've sort of got two different perspectives going now in my career. One is notation based with theory and sight reading, and the other one comes from a more rote point of view when we're playing in comfortable keys, but brings it back to sight reading in the same piece through a spot the difference approach. The piece is broken down.
I think one of the things that you just said, Samantha, that really makes me smile is I have a set of twins that they're like two little cartoon characters. And whenever they play a piece and their thumbs have to share on middle C, both the twins, they I guess because they're twins, I don't know, they have this little fight with their thumbs, and they really don't like to touch each other when they're sharing middle C. And it's quite hilarious because as soon as I have them play, as you said, moving into another mode or a different key or a different position, then they're fine, but they just don't like to be sharing. So a question when you're doing this, aren't students just obsessed by looking at their hands when they're learning by rote? Or how do you deal with that, Samantha?
Well, that's a good question. I think that yes, they do look at their hands when they are learning a piece by rote, but I encourage that. I think it's important for students to look at their hands. If we don't just break away from talking about repertoire for a moment, there are lots of things that we teach by rote as piano teachers. Technique is taught by rote.
Absolutely.
Technique is not taught by notation. Technique is all about looking at your hands, looking at your wrists, looking at your fingers, copying the teacher, copying the demonstration. So we do rote teaching. Even all teachers teach technique by rote.
Yes.
So in that respect, I've also tried to write repertoire that when it's initially taught by rote, yes, they are monitoring their hands. They're in a comfortable hand position where the piece is easy enough to check that their wrists are not dropping, that their fingers are not flat, and they need to see their own hands. They're going to be looking at their own hands eventually when they memorize pieces. Mm-hmm. So the notation is only there to give instructions at the beginning. Once all those instructions have been given, the notation is no longer necessary. Now we want to make music. We don't need to keep looking at the score. It's not a reading exercise. We've got our instructions from the score. The score is a representation of the sound that we're trying to make. So yes, when they first learn by rote, they are looking at their hands. But then I show them the piece that they just played, and I say, look, this is what you just played. And they're usually like, oh, really? Because it's full of sharps and flats all over the page. It's full of complicated looking rhythms, which are very easy to play. So all the jazzy syncopated rhythms are so easy to play, but very difficult to read. So they go, really? I played that? And they're very impressed with themselves. And then, yes, they would probably still want to look at their hands. But then I'm getting them to engage with the score because I changed the score. I show them a level 2 version, and say, okay, spot the difference. What do you notice?
Right. And
they're scanning that page, and they are seeing how those differences will correlate to the sound and to their hands. Mm-hmm. And then they will do a combination of looking at the score and looking at their hands. So to me, I think it's important for young pianists to look at their hands. Obviously, when you become an adept sight reader, you don't have time to look down. You do need to have a sense of topography of the keyboard without looking down. But that's a separate skill that can be addressed separately. So it doesn't have, there are all these things we can address. So I like to do a combination of rote and reading in all my lessons. So everything has its place.
Yes. And I really agree with you, Samantha, because even if you think about a student who may be having dropped wrists, until you say, well, now look at your hands. Where are your wrists? They go, oh, and then they're almost surprised because they're not aware of their body and where they are. And so I think it's important to address that and let them know that it is okay, because you're right. Once you've memorized your piece, you're not just going to look into outer space and play your piece, that you'd kind of look ridiculous. And so now we've talked about, you've managed to cover the technique, and perhaps the expressive aspects and sight reading all in one piece. So how do we explore creativity now?
So creativity is a huge passion of mine, and something that, again, I was not brought up on. So just like I never had any experience with rote teaching, I also never had any experience with creativity. Nobody ever asked me to improvise or to try changing a piece. That's all come within my working life. Working in a Yamaha school, doing some whole body learning and whole body teaching, like Paul Myatt talks about a lot. And I'm very, very passionate about that. So with these pieces that I have written to get from rote to reading, level 1 is taught by rote. Level 2 has changes in the score that they compare. Level 3 has more changes in the score. And level 3 is like, it's like the real piece, if you like. So once they've mastered level 3, I ask my students to go home and make up their own level 4.
Oh,
and it's easy for them to do because they've kind of already seen 3 little variations on this piece.
Right.
And I give them suggestions of what they can change. And the most delightful thing is when they chuck all my suggestions out the window and come up with their own. And that's the launching pad to creativity. So we always need boundaries.
Yes.
And then we can move on from those boundaries. So the level 4 concept is how I include creativity in my lessons. They've got a piece, and now they've got permission to change that piece as much as they want.
And I think that really is, it does start them on the way to their own improvising, their own compositions. I remember my young daughter, many years ago now, she had a piano in her bedroom because I was teaching, and obviously the grand piano is not going to fit in her bedroom. So I'm teaching, and she had a piano in her bedroom, but she didn't have a phone or TV or radio or anything else, just her bed and her piano. So when she went to her room, sometimes angry and slamming the door, I would hear her with nothing else to do. She would be practicing. And I'll never forget when she was learning Fur-Elise, which of course we all know. But then she was so annoyed that she thought she would make me mad by improvising. And she turned it into a jazz piece and changed all the rhythmic patterns. And actually, I quite enjoyed it. And she later entered a competition, which was, improvising on classical pieces. And she actually won her class at the festival. And we kind of laugh about it now because, of course, that was 20 years ago. But I think that's the key to starting young children on these, just giving them permission to be creative, maybe change the rhythmic pattern, maybe change it from a major to a minor key. Like, why not just, lower the third and see what comes out, right? So I think it's a lot of fun. So what ages and abilities are your pieces really aimed towards?
Well, I've written them all for beginners, for absolute beginners. So anyone in their first 2 years of learning, I've categorized them by the number of hats on the page. I have a little critter that is kind of part of my branding. So a 1 hat piece is for a student in their first 6 months of learning, up to 4 hats for 18 to 24 months. So they would be little repertoire pieces, actual possible little recital pieces for students who are beginners. But what I've been using them for my more advanced students, for intermediate and advanced students, is they become quick fire sight reading activities. So whereas a young student will do level 1 taught by rote in the first week, and then go to level 2 in the second week, and level 3 in the third week, and then they're done. A sight reading, a more advanced student will sight read those in 5 minutes, like just do levels 1, 2, 3, and maybe 4, all in 5 minutes in one lesson, which is so much more exciting than, sight read this test piece here. it gets them scanning the page, it gets them seeing differences, and then they're also sight reading in keys that they don't normally sight read in, because it's moving away from those traditional beginning notation pieces. So they're really for all ages and abilities, because of the way that they're used. They have like multi-purpose use, and they're all in a contemporary style. So I wanted to make sure that they would all be relevant to students in the 21st century. I think there's plenty of 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th century stuff already written.
Yes.
And so I've tried to keep the styles as modern as I can, to hopefully make them as appealing to modern students as I can.
Yeah, and I think that's the key too, isn't it, Samantha? I mean, as a composer and author, you know that times change. I mean, even when I was talking about my daughter, it was, before cell phones, before computers, before this, before that. And now we want to make sure that we're current and we stay relevant. And I do want to ask our viewers out there, maybe share with us, do you teach by rote, or do you always use books for sight reading? It would be interesting to know what kind of questions you have for Samantha in your teaching. So I know for myself, until now, was using workbooks for sight reading. But now that you're talking about this incorporating rote into sight reading, I think that's really fantastic, because even if you're playing a little piece and asking them to play it back, or they might hear some music on the radio and they want to learn that song. So it really helps them become independent as musicians when you're giving them these tools to say, well, you don't have to read every piece of music. You can learn the piece by rote, and it's okay to do so, right?
Absolutely. And there's also a big difference between learning by rote and learning by ear. Mm-hmm. So learning by rote is a visual and oral demonstration. Look, watch, copy me. And learning by ear, I think, is amazing. It's a very, very advanced and refined art to be able to listen to something and reproduce it. That is an amazing skill. So to harness and develop both of those skills, as well as being able to read by notation, means that learn by notation means that you've got a very well-rounded musician that can access what they want to access. And in the 21st century, it's all about instant access. They're not going to wait very long to do anything, these students.
And I think too, we as educators and we're sharing, and I'm so glad that you're here, and thank you again, Samantha, because now we can really have access to information. I mean, I'm here in Canada, it's, time for dinner, and you're in Australia, it's time for breakfast. And here we are, not only, communicating with each other and sharing ideas, but people have access to information now, and all of our guests and viewers, whether you're watching live or you're watching the replay, you have the opportunity to learn new ways of teaching and implement them immediately into your studio. And before we came on live, I did ask Samantha if she could share or had any tips that she could share with us as teachers. So you may want to grab a pen and a piece of paper, because I'm anxious to hear what you're going to share with us, Samantha.
Okay, well, I just thought I'd share 3 things that I'm doing this term. In Australia, we have 4 teaching terms in the year, each of 10 weeks each. So we're currently in term 4, the last one of the year, before we have our big summer break over Christmas. Right. And so this term, I'm doing 3 things that I'm quite excited about that are working well in the studio. So the first one is that sort of a studio-wide challenge where it's a 10-task term. So I've done a little chart for everybody. I'll supply this as a PDF. So everyone has a little task. I don't know if you can read that. Yeah. Alice's 10-task term chart, and they have 10 tasks that they have to do, and they get a stamp for levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of each one. Level 1 is we've just started. Level 5 is it's completed. And so it's a way of keeping track of what they do. The chart goes up on the wall, and just a bit of a gimmick to try and get through 10 things. Not necessarily 10 pieces, 10 tasks. 10, it could be a composition, it could be a theory sheet, it could be a section of a piece. So that's one thing. Another thing that I'm doing is...
Thank you for that, Samantha. I will, I know you'll send me the PDF, and I'll make sure to put it in the show notes. So you won't, even if you're watching live right now, you can just come back and check it out, and I'll make sure to post it in there. So thank you for that. So the second thing.
Second thing is that in my end of year concert, everybody will, in my studio concert, everybody will play a piece of their choice, but I'm also getting everybody to do a level 4 of one piece. So every student is going to do one of my Rote pieces. It's a little one that actually is not quite released yet. It's called Semi-Disco because it's a little disco groove piece, but all based on semitones. And so everybody's going to learn that. Doesn't matter what age they are. It will be extremely easy for most of them because most of my students are intermediate. They learn the piece in like 1 week, levels 1, 2, and 3. I'm asking all of them to make up their own level 4, which I will work on with them over the term. So they will gradually morph and become less and less familiar and move further away from the original. So then in the end of year concert, I will play the original, and then we will hear about 20 remixes of that piece. And I have done this exercise once before, and it's quite amazing what happens, and the audience really, really enjoys it to hear all the things that the students come up with. So that's a compositional activity that is also a performance activity.
I think that is a fantastic idea. I might have to steal that idea. I think that it really gives students an opportunity to shine on their own with their own creativity and just explore ways. And I'm sure they work really hard because they know that everyone else is doing it and they want theirs to kind of stand out, right? Yes, they do. And it's fascinating for them to hear all the other ideas that come out. And I get them to, some students get really stumped when you're asking them to work on a composition. And so we can take inspiration from the pieces that they already love and play. If they are enjoying playing Mozart, we can have some classical influences in their level 4. If they're playing some Debussy, same thing. That's what composers do. They draw on inspiration from other composers. So it is a really fun thing to put into a concert, and the parents actually love it. I've had lots of feedback in the past. Yeah, absolutely. And number 3, yes. I've always thought that I should be taking notes like a doctor does. Doctors dictate notes into their dictaphone when the patient leaves, and then they have a file and they know exactly what's gone on in the last session because they might not see patients for many months. But I was thinking, I always thought I should do that for when my students leave each week. And I finally set it up on OneNote on my computer so that I can keep notes week to week, my own personal notes. So all my students have a notebook that I write detailed homework notes in. And I know there are plenty of apps out there that help teachers with keeping notes for students. And I think it's a really good idea. So I'm finally implementing a properly hardwired way to just give feedback on the lessons myself that I can review each week, not just the content of what they're playing, but also what their mood was like and how they reacted in their lesson. And I think I probably should have started doing this a lot earlier. Well, those are really great tips. They're really great tips, Samantha. And how can we learn more about you and your materials and all of the resources that you have for us? Well, I have one main website, which is BlitzBooks.com. So on that website are all my blogs, all my free resources, and there's a huge link to my Rote repertoire site. So if you Google BlitzBooks Rote repertoire, you will get to my site with all the pieces. There are over 50 pieces on the site now. They're each available in little digital packs. So it's studio licensed PDFs. Nice. There's video tutorials of me explaining how to teach each level. There's audio tracks that the students can use. And there's a teacher guide for every single piece. So there's also a few little bundles. There's currently 4 of the scariest and spookiest pieces bundled up into a Halloween bundle. So if people are into that sort of thing and want to do some Halloween themed pieces with their students and also get them sight reading, then that's available there as well. So BlitzBooks.com is the main place to go, and that will lead to the other site if people are interested in the repertoire. Perfect. I actually just popped it up on the screen. So BlitzBooks.com, and you can learn more about Samantha Coates and her fantastic works and all of her ideas. So that would be great. One of the things we shared a little bit about kind of sharing information, and it really helps us grow as musicians and as teachers. And it seems that as a teacher, we are also a student who never stops learning. My mom called it NEPD, never ending professional development. And I continue to learn every day, sometimes even from my students, right? They teach us. And so as we're all educators and continuing with our own education, what's up next for your own professional development, Samantha?
Well, firstly, I should say I still have a piano lesson every week myself. I have a teacher. I have a Taubman certified Taubman instructor who's my teacher. So it's never ending to work on my own piano technique and to take under advisement everything that I'm doing with my own students as well, especially for my more advanced students. So I agree with that NEPD. That's absolutely true. I'm doing I've got 3 exciting things coming up in terms of delivering professional development. I've got, in January, I'm doing a workshop with a colleague of mine named Carly McDonald. We are doing a national tour on managing parents, because that's something that all piano teachers, all music teachers need to do, is manage the parents in their studio. I am the keynote speaker for Tim Topham's conference, Piano Pivot Live. That's at the end of January. Yes. So I'm excited to do that. And I'm actually going to be talking about how the internet has changed our workplace, because it really has, as we were just talking about before. Here we are on opposite sides of the world sharing information, and it has really changed our lives as piano teachers. And then I'm also going to be speaking at MTNA in Chicago. And I'm very much looking forward to attending that conference, because I do love MTNA. So I'm going to be doing a session on rote and reading, and talking all about how that all came about, and sort of more fully explaining how rote teaching can lead to really, really good sight reading. But yes, MTNA. It's incredible.
I'm going to be attending the hopefully you can still hear me okay. I'm going to be attending MTNA as well, and so I'm really excited because I'll get to meet you in person. Yes, I'm actually doing a showcase as well, and I'm going to get to come and see you presenting. So I'm really excited to hear you speak at MTNA as well. It's going to be a fantastic conference. So I'm sure we'll do lots of shout outs to all of our musician friends. And it's going to be in Chicago, which of course is amazing, and fantastic venue there for having the MTNA conference this year, 2020. I believe it's in March. So hopefully some of our viewers will be coming out to see us as well. Thank you so much for your great insights and all your teaching tips, Samantha. I look forward to implementing your system of rote teaching to help my students improve their sight reading, because we always can improve what we do for sure. And as you mentioned, in this day and age, I hope that teachers are out there really searching for in continued education for themselves. And if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and share, and join our Ultimate Music Theory Facebook group so you can network with other educators and musicians such as Samantha. And if you want all the latest interviews and more music theory tips, simply subscribe to our Ultimate Music Theory YouTube channel, because we release new videos every week, including this one, which will be going up on the YouTube channel, so you can watch it or share it with your friends. Thanks again, Samantha. I really am grateful for you being here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Glory. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Have a fantastic musical day. Teach with passion. See ya.